happened. But tonight I want to talk through with you this process. And many of you understand this process. But I want you to think through it a little differently in how it plays out. And next week, then, we're going to talk through some other practical things I think are going to be real helpful. So tonight, though, I want to talk to you a little bit about 12 steps to intimacy. Now, here's the problem. Most of us, when we think about the word sex, the only thing we're talking about is intercourse or hooking up, or you get the picture. Um, but that's really a bad way of looking at it. Sex is a process. Sex is a progression. And I think we kind of know this, and we often ask the question, how far is too far? Don't we? But tonight I want to talk through this a little bit, and hopefully we can reorient our thinking in some of this. So let's talk through this. James Dobson kind of wrote a book. He made it kind of popular. Basically, it's his idea in these 12 steps to intimacy. So I want to make sure he gets a little bit of credit there because it's his. So, but I'm going to talk through it a little bit. Now, some of you recognize that's Steve. Steve is now in Colorado. That really isn't Steve. But anyway, the first thing that we know, the first thing that begins the step of sex is eye to body, isn't it? That is why Sports Illustrated make millions of dollars, isn't it? And it isn't by accident that the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue comes out right around Valentine's Day. There you go, February 18th. So I guess it's right after Valentine's Day, I guess. But we all know that eye to body, basically a glance reveals much about a person, their sex, obviously, hopefully, size, shape, age, personality, status. The importance people place on these criteria determines whether or not they will be attracted to each other. Now, here's the important thing about this one. Okay? We're going to spend some more time talking about it, probably more next week, but I want you to think through this. Girls, what you wear is the first act of sex. How tight you choose to wear it, how loose you choose to wear it, how revealing you choose to be, goes back to that very first thing. That's the first act of sex. Because what are you revealing about yourself? What are you doing? Especially to a guy, because how are guys stimulated? With their eyes. Girls are not so much stimulated that way. They can be, but girls tend to be more stimulated by touch. Guys, all it takes is a light to go on. Right? Am I lying here? Okay. You know what I'm talking about. Let's go back. That's why the swimsuit models are a big deal. That's why the porn industry is a big deal. That's why, you go down the list of the reason. All you got to do is turn your eyes on, right? And most of us in this room, our eyes are on. We can see. So what you wear is a big, big, big deal. I'm not going to spend a ton of time again on this. Some of you may have read my email I sent out with the link to the whole yoga pant discussion. I'm just going to make this real clear out the out front. Yoga pant is not the issue. Well, that's partly the issue. Boys have eyes, but it's also, let's just be honest, the material, how tight it is, what it reveals, and so on and so forth. And you know exactly what it is. Because every one of us, every morning, we wake up and we make a decision when we open up our closet door and decide what we're going to wear. And there's a thought process that happens. Some of us were a little bit more aware of what we're doing. Others, maybe not. But I can promise you, every time you go, I'm saying, I'm going to wear that, I'm going to wear that. Why are you choosing what you're choosing? So, here's what 1 Timothy says, or Paul says to 1 Timothy. He says, I want women to be modest in their appearance. They should wear decent and appropriate clothing and not draw attention to themselves. Okay, let's just call it what it is. He's saying, don't enhance things that don't need to be. You get where I'm going with this. Attention to them by the way they fix their hair, by wearing gold or pearls or expensive clothes. Enhancing your figure to draw attention to yourself. That's what he's saying. It says First Peter. He says, don't be concerned about the outward beauty that depends on, and get this, that depends on fancy hairstyles, expensive jewelry, or beautiful clothes. You should be known for the beauty that comes from within, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit which is precious to God. That is the way the holy women of old made themselves beautiful. They trusted God and accepted the authority of their husbands, which it gets into a whole other set of issues we're not going to deal with right now. But the point is this: work on your character and who you are inwardly first. And I'm gonna be real honest with you here. Um, there are guys that like girls that make themselves available. We all know that. But I will also tell you this: there are a lot of guys that like girls who are respectable and who have high quality character. And you need to think long and hard about what kind of guy you want to attract, what kind of guy you want to marry, because you're going to be with him for life. And the real reality is, too, eye to body, here's the real reality. I'm going to speak some truth here. You get married, they aren't going to look like that their whole life. It's true. It's true. And it can just be the natural things because you get older and things move to different places. Or it can be the unnatural things of like you get in a car wreck and all of a sudden your face is disfigured, but you're still married. And it's for life. And character is a much bigger deal in that case. So let's move on. Secondly, eye to eye. Of course, that's when the man and the woman, or the teen or whoever, are strangers to each other and they exchange glances. The most natural reaction is to look away because, oh my gosh, she just noticed me and she caught my eye and oh, I got caught. But we also know this: if you look back and your eyes meet again, oh, that's a good sign, isn't it? That's a good sign. Something's happening. Thirdly, voice to voice. This is that initial conversation. Now, you could actually add maybe one in here, texting to texting, because I've also know that sometimes people ask people out and they never even talk to the person, which is maybe even paper to paper. Or like, will you go out with me? Yes, no, maybe. Or come to my locker, that kind of stuff. I mean, it's like people like ask each other out and they never even see each other. And it's weird. But most healthy ways of doing things is they have initial conversations and trivial kinds of questions, pickup lines. Hey, what's your name? If they're compatible, you start to see where the friendship develops, right? I mean, this happens with really any kind of relationship in a lot of ways. You kind of start having a conversation, start talking, things start happening. Next is the old hand to hand. Now, this is where the movie theaters come in handy, no pun intended. Uh, could be non romantic, such as a man helping a woman around an obstacle. Could be you falling down, I'm helping pick you up. I mean, there's nothing romantic if I grab Andrew's hand and said, hey, I'll help you up. That's not romantic. But when you're sitting at the movie theater and all of a sudden, like your hand is kind of going like this, and you're like, all of a sudden it touches. I mean, like your pinky touch. I mean, you know where this is going. And then all of a sudden, like the grass. Oh, okay. Tell me how it happens. Yeah, there's that approach too. There's that approach. I was coming on to that one next. So yeah, yeah. There's the old. Yeah, yeah. Okay, you got that. So hand to hand, or then of course hand to shoulder. The affectionate embrace is really non-committal. It's that buddy type of thing in which the man and the woman are side by side. And really, honestly, I mean, guys can do this. I mean, like, you know, yeah. I mean, this isn't necessarily, but you can see where the progression is moving, right? So let's move on here. Number 6 is, of course, hand to waist. Now, it wouldn't be that unusual if I put my arm around Alan's neck. But if I came up and said, hey, buddy, and put my arm around his waist, that's starting to get a little awkward. Um, so you kind of get where this is going, don't you? Because it's something two people of the same gender wouldn't necessarily do. It's close enough that they share secrets, but are still kind of facing forward, right? You get where we're going with this. So 7, face to face, that's that level of contact that involves gazing into one another's eyes. And oh my, then they start to hug, and then that word. Uh oh. Now we're moving on. That got awkward for Janie. Hand to head, the man and the woman tend to cradle or stroke each other's head while kissing or talking. That's it's a designation of emotional closeness. Yeah, it is kind of awkward. Yeah, I mean, it's whatever. Anyway, so then 9 through 12, I think, is the last one. The last 4 levels are distinctly sexual and private. Obviously, the final steps should be reserved for the marital relationship. And I would actually challenge you. Well, I'll come back to that. Hand the body, mouth the body, touching below the waist, and of course, intercourse. Now, here's the deal. All of this, again, is a progression. Sex is we often talk about it as intercourse, don't we? I mean, that's in our society, our culture, when we talk about sex, that's generally what people are saying. But the problem is it's a very misconstrued view. And unfortunately, our society has really jacked up our view of what sex actually is and the progression that it is. Um, so Romans 1 says it this way. Says, God let them go ahead and do whatever shameful things their hearts desired. As a result, they did vile and degrading things with each other's bodies. Instead of believing what they knew was the truth about God, they deliberately chose to believe the lies. And so they worshiped things God made, but not the Creator Himself. They worshiped the Sports Illustrated swimsuit model, but not the creator of the model. Right? How many people, I mean, honestly, let's just call it what it is. How many people have memory verses on their wall versus how many people have bikini models on their wall? Now, you don't have to tell me. You don't have to tell me. But in our culture, I can promise you which wins, unfortunately. I mean, you get what's going on here. Romans 12 says it this way. I think this is really important. Dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you, give your bodies to God. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind He will accept. When you think of what He's done for you, is this really too much to ask? Don't copy the behavior and the customs of this world. Let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will know what God wants you to do, and you will know how good and pleasing His perfect will really is. Philippians 4:8 says it this way. My brothers and sisters, let me say one more thing as I close the letter. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right. Think about things that are pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. You get where he's saying? You get the idea here? That we often fill our minds with so much stuff. We fill our minds with so many images. We begin the sexual progression with people we don't even know. Song of Solomon says it this way. He says, quick, catch all the little foxes before they ruin the vineyard of your love, for the grapevines are all in blossom. Now, that's kind of the whole book is kind of this song and this love story that's kind of going on. Basically, it's this. He's saying, be careful. Guard your hearts. Don't awaken love before it's time. Because here's the real reality, guys. One, you can't get married right now. Just calling a spade a spade. So tell me, what advantage is it then to start dating if the purpose of dating is to find a spouse to get married. Right? I mean, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? Um, Jeremiah 17:9 says it this way: the human heart is most deceitful and desperately wicked. Who really knows how bad it is? And boy, that's true. 1 Timothy 5:2 says, treat the older women as you would your mother. Treat the younger women with all purity as your own sister. Now, let me ask you this. An old friend of mine said it this way. He goes, because I'm going to challenge you with a thought on kissing. Okay? One, some people go, it's kissing. It's okay. It's not sex. Would you kiss your mom like that? Why? You should, I mean, be honest with me though. You've kissed your mom before, right? But there's a difference, isn't there? There's a difference, and we know what that difference is, right? Because in one sense, you go, Red, you're a fruit. What in the world are you saying here? That's wrong. That's sick and wrong. Well, yeah, of course it is. Then don't tell me though that with your boyfriend or girlfriend, that's not an act of sex. You know it is. You know it is. I would challenge you to go so far as to think of it this way. And this is a challenge I wish someone had given me as a kid. Um, and it's interesting. There's a big article out there on the outside of that door about Colin Klein who said this. He goes, I'm not kissing my wife until the altar. Not kissing my girlfriend until we are married. That's respectable. That's self-discipline. That's understanding the act, the progression of sex. 1 Corinthians 6:12 says it this way: you may say, I'm allowed to do anything, but I reply, not everything is good for you. And even though I'm not allowed, or I am allowed to do anything, I must not become a slave to anything. Basically, he's saying this: there are a lot of things that you can do, but it is not beneficial to do. It's not good for you to do. So we're not going to deal with that right now. Here's what I want to do real quickly. I want to give you a little bit of an illustration because we often ask the question, well, then how far is too far? How far can I make out? How long can I make out? Whatever the case. So let me ask you this question then. I actually need 3 volunteers. All right, you're one. Chloe, go ahead. And DeAndre, I'll let you. Sorry. I just needed 3. I'll call you later. Okay, now here's what I want you to do, okay? I want you to come over here. I need you to stand right here. Okay? Now, oh, dude, man, you're knocking my notes everywhere. I mean, that's okay. You're fine here. All 3 of you have to come up here. Don't do what he did, though. That's a great game. No, we're not. Okay, here you go. Here you go. Now, here's the objects, okay? I down here have a line. In fact, I'm going to make the line right here, okay? The only thing I don't want you to do, okay? Let's make sure this is clear. The only thing I ask you not to do is throw it past that line, okay? So, you can go first. Go ahead. All right? Okay? Aha! You came the closest to the line. Great job. You lost. Go ahead and sit down. Yeah, you did. That's good. Yeah, you can have the pity. That's fine. Here's the point, isn't it? Isn't that the issue? That most of us in life, and it really isn't just with sex, it's with any kind of thing, isn't it? That we often want to see how close to the line we can get without sinning, don't we? How much can I look at whatever? How far can I go with whoever before I sin? Right? That's the thinking. And what God says to do is exactly turn and go the other way. Like you. You did a great job. Yeah. I mean, the truth is, God says, all he says is, I don't want you to go there. Don't go there. run towards righteousness, run towards purity, pursue goodness, doesn't he? And yet most of us, if we're really honest, we're always trying to see how close can we get before we fall, don't we? And the farther I keep going, then the more I'm about to end up in your lap. So I'm not going to stop. So it's really a bad question. How far is too far is really just a bad question. I mean, we shouldn't even be asking that question, honestly. And so, um, again, here's the issue. Then, what's your standard? What's your standard? Because here's the deal: we fill our minds with all kinds of stuff, don't we? Think through what you listen to. Think through what you're watching. Think through what you're observing on the internet. Are they things that cause you to pursue righteousness? Or are they things that continue to clutter and fill your mind with stuff that is not wholesome? Because that really is the issue. Um, so I talked a little bit about with dating and that kind of thing. Is it right or wrong? I don't know that that's really even a good question. Is it wise at your age? It doesn't make a lot of sense, honestly. What are you going to do? I mean, honestly, think through what dating is. Trying to find your spouse, trying to develop a relationship, trying to go and go and go and go and go. Where's it going to go? If it ends up being your spouse, it's going to end up in intercourse, isn't it? That's how God designed it. It's not a bad thing. That progression is a good thing. God made it that way for you and one person. The problem is you can't end up there, so why even begin that process? Does it make sense? So we'll talk about it a little bit more in the next week or so. But I wanted you to be thinking about that a little bit. Um, and this whole progression, and that sex is a progression, it's a process. And it begins with your eye. And so the issue of modesty is a really big, big issue. It should be thought through. And girls, you need to think through. Here's the issue, too, okay? I want you to think through this. There's really 5 different kinds of love mentioned in Scripture. One is eros, erotic. That's the kind of love. Oh yeah, there they are. There's phileo, which is brotherly love, Philadelphia. There's hesed. There's storge, and I'm not going to talk about those. But eros is romantic, erotic, that kind of love, and agape then is God's love. It is the kind of love that looks towards the needs of others. The command in Scripture is we are to love others. Now, here's the issue. I want you to think through this. When you choose to act, are you acting in the best interest of the other person? So here's a question for you, guys and girls. When you choose to dress, are you choosing to dress based off of me? Or are you choosing to dress thinking of the other person and helping them to stay pure and righteous and holy? Now, unfortunately, I know the answer to that in a lot of cases. But I would challenge you to think through that. So with that, we're going to break up into our discussion groups.